At 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I discovered the reservation while she was already asleep, claiming a migraine as an excuse. Lately, these migraines seem to occur regularly on Wednesdays and always coincided with Pastor Lucian's community outreach schedule. Despite recognizing this pattern 3 months prior, I dismissed my suspicions as paranoia. After all, my wife of 7 years, who was married to our pastor, would never be involved in such activities. However, doubts can be tenacious weeds, and once they take hold, they flourish in the darkness. That evening, I sat in my home office performing a routine backup of our joint family cloud account. We had established this account years ago for synchronizing photos, documents, travel plans. However, Sloan stopped using it for important matters about 6 months prior, opting instead for her personal email for what she termed work-related items. Although I wasn't searching for anything specific, cloud accounts maintain extensive histories, and deleted files remain intact until the server discards them. On that particular night, I wasn't snooping. I was merely ensuring our digital memories were safe. The document I found in the recently deleted folder was a PDF confirmation from Serenity Peaks Mountain Resort, confirming a 5-star couples spa package reservation for 4 nights in the Summit Suite under Mr. and Mrs. Lucian Ashford. Despite my wife's name being Sloan Mercer, her lesser-used middle name is Ashford. The reservation dates coincide precisely with the pastoral mission trip that Lucian announced to the congregation 3 weeks ago, a trip my wife had volunteered to help organize. I had initially planned to attend my sister's wedding during those days, but she claimed she was too busy. However, I remained composed, did not weep, didn't throw any objects, and didn't wake her up to demand explanations. Rather than what I'm typically skilled at, I collected data. Given my 12-year career in cybersecurity, my profession involves comprehension of systems, identifying weaknesses, and taking advantage of them before others do. Contrary to public perception, hackers are not solely criminals holed up in dimly lit spaces. In reality, the top-tier security specialists need to think like criminals because it's our role to foresee the worst possible scenarios and fortify defenses against them. That particular night, I acknowledged that in my relentless pursuit of safeguarding others' systems, I had neglected to secure my own life entirely. For the subsequent 72 hours, I transformed into a spectral presence in my own matrimony. I offered breakfast smiles, bid her goodbye, inquired about her day, and each evening post her slumber I delved further. I uncovered the secret email account she had established under her maternal grandmother's name, the messages stacking up, approximately 8 months old. I found the images she had sent to him, the ones that stirred revulsion not from envy, but from the cold, calculated treachery embodied within them. She had gazed into my eyes daily, maintaining a full relationship with another man, none other than our pastor, the spiritual guide of our congregation, the advisor for troubled couples on fidelity, the individual who had orated at our altar about the sacrosanct bond of marriage. The irony was staggering. Yet I was not like every other husband who has endured this torturous ordeal. I desired more than merely to unmask them. Temporary experiences can be emotional. People usually recover from such situations, constructing narratives, often falling prey to misconceptions or mistreatment. I had witnessed this pattern before, with scandals that eventually subsided and reputations that were restored. However, what I sought was not recovery or rehabilitation. I desired complete, systematic, and irreversible destruction. For this purpose, an ally was necessary. It was not generally known by our congregation, but Pastor Lucian Ashford was not self-made. His wealth, which included his seminary education, first church building, tailored suits, luxury SUV, and even the car he drove for mission trips, did not derive from pastoral salary or divine providence. Instead, it came from his wife, Camilla Ashford, who hailed from old money. Her family had controlled half of our county's commercial real estate for 3 generations. The church building itself sat on land her grandfather had donated, the parsonage was in her name, and the car Lucian drove was registered to a trust managed by her family. Camilla was discreet and reserved. The pastor's wife, who coordinated bake sales and smiled from the pulpit, yet never delivered sermons or craved attention. Many believed she was mild-mannered, but I suspected otherwise. I managed to obtain her contact information via the church directory and sent an appropriately worded email proposing a confidential discussion concerning the church's affairs. She consented to meet me at a coffee shop located 30 miles outside of town, away from any potential witnesses. As scheduled, she arrived punctually, dressed modestly yet elegantly in a manner that only wealth can convey, devoid of logos or ostentation but exuding quality. I had carefully prepared my speech, printed corroborating evidence, and rehearsed how I would deliver the news compassionately. However, before I could take my seat, she said, "I know why you're here," in a tone that was serene, almost indifferent. "For how long?" I replied, "Approximately 8 months." She listened attentively, slowly nodding as she stirred her tea. For about 2 years, I'd harbored suspicions. She was once a youth minister's wife prior to Sloan and a church secretary before that. The response I received wasn't what I anticipated: no tears, no denial, no shaking hands. Instead, Camilla regarded me much like a surgeon examining an X-ray, planning her move. "I have evidence," I declared, setting the folder on the table. "Emails, reservations, financial records showing church funds misused for personal expenses. If you wish to bring this before the board, they are of no use." She silenced me, admitting that more than half were petrified by Lucian's charm and the other half were complicit in turning a blind eye. "I have already tried that avenue," she admitted, finally looking up from her tea. "It leads nowhere. Then what do you suggest?" In her eyes, I saw why her family had amassed an empire. It was not compassion or empathy, but the icy, calculated patience of one who'd learned long ago that justice is best served with solid evidence. "Mercer, do you want to wound them or obliterate them?" I made no hesitation. Obliterate. For the first time since sitting down, Camilla smiled, not a cheerful smile. "Well then, we have tasks ahead." Over the next 3 weeks, our clandestine meetings took place in various locations, always mindful to leave no digital trail. I discovered that Camilla had been meticulously preparing for this moment for years. She possessed copies of all financial records, property deeds, contracts signed by her husband, and moreover, a prenuptial agreement with an unyielding infidelity clause, as her father had insisted on it due to his distrust of Lucian. I should have listened. The prenup specified that any proven infidelity would forfeit all marital assets, including properties held in joint trusts, the house, cars, investments, everything. However, proving infidelity within a legal context is more complex than it seems. Emails can be falsified, photos manipulated, and even eyewitness accounts challenged. We required something irrefutable, something that could not be explained or disputed by a shrewd lawyer. We needed a confession. This is where my unique skill set became useful. Like many luxury establishments, Serenity Peaks Mountain Resort had modernized their check-in process. Guests no longer signed paper forms but agreed to terms using tablets. The digital signature was legally binding and automatically stored securely. However, security in digital systems is only as strong as the weakest access point. And in this case, it was a front desk employee named Marcus who was struggling financially and open to an attractive cash offer for temporary access credentials. I clarify that I did not hack the resort's main systems or steal any data. Instead, I created a modified check-in form specifically for one reservation. When Lucian Ashford checked in with his wife, the tablet would present a slightly altered version of the standard waiver, requiring him to digitally sign an affidavit admitting to an extramarital relationship and using Ashford family trust funds for personal romantic purposes. Camilla had power of attorney over several joint accounts due to Lucian's busy schedule and disinterest in financial matters. 4 hours before the cheaters arrived at the resort, she would use her power to freeze all their cards, accounts, and lines of credit, leaving them unable to pay for their $15,000 suite. The retreat began on a Thursday. Sloan was scheduled to visit her college roommate for a long weekend, and I encouraged her, helping her pack her suitcase without mentioning that I had memorized every outfit she had chosen. On Friday morning, I drove with Camilla to Serenity Peaks Mountain Resort, where we checked in under her maiden name, paid in cash, and remained anonymous. We spent Thursday afternoon at the resort spa preparing, and Camilla brought an evening gown that likely cost more than my car. I rented a tuxedo suitable for a James Bond film. When we arrived at the resort's signature restaurant, Altitude, at 7:30 p.m., we ordered wine and waited. At 8:15 p.m., they walked in, and Sloane's expression changed from surprise to recognition. Color drained from her face as she saw me. We spent 2 hours observing them, sending a bottle of champagne with the note to Hidden Blessings. The following day, we attended the resort's annual gala night, where Lucian and Sloane were visibly distraught. We danced, mingled, and accepted compliments from strangers who assumed us to be newlyweds while they grew increasingly desperate. On Saturday night, when they attempted to leave quietly, I intercepted them near the coat check and asked if they were leaving so early. The night was young. Lucian tried to assert his pastoral authority, but I calmly informed him that I knew about their infidelity for weeks. The question wasn't whether I knew, the question was what would happen next. Sloane started to cry, and I told her that there was something she should know. 4 hours ago, Camilla assumed power of attorney over all joint accounts, freezing every card Lucian had, making all accounts inaccessible. This left Lucian stranded in a $15,000 suite with no means to pay. A look of shock washed over Lucian as I gestured towards Camilla, who stood beside me with a cold smile. "You can't," I said to Lucian. "She did." I then presented him with a document. "Do you recall the tablet you signed when checking in? The digital waiver." Lucian nodded, not understanding. "You didn't read it, did you?" I continued. "It wasn't a liability waiver. It was an affidavit, a legally binding statement that you were checking into this resort with a woman who is not your wife for the purpose of conducting an extramarital affair." Lucian's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The document had been automatically emailed to 3 addresses immediately after he signed it: his church board, Camilla's lawyers, and the county recorder's office. "It triggers the infidelity clause in your prenup," I explained. "Every asset, every property, every penny that came from the Ashford family gone. The house is gone, the cars are gone, the church building, which sits on Ashford land, is also gone." "This is entrapment, this is illegal," Lucian whispered. I shook my head. "It's not entrapment, it's negligence. You voluntarily signed a document without reading its contents. Nobody forced you, nobody deceived you about what it was, that's negligence." Sloane tried to grab my arm, pleading for us to work things out. "We can go to counseling, we can," she said. I gently removed her hand. "The divorce papers will be waiting for you when you get home if you can figure out how to get home, because that car you drove here in, the Range Rover, is registered to the Ashford Family Trust. Camilla is driving it back tonight." "You're leaving us here?" Sloane asked, her voice cracking. "No," I replied. "I'm leaving you with the bill $15,000 for the suite, another $3,000 for room service and spa treatments. When you can't pay at the resort, we'll call the police, not for the affair, nobody cares about that, but for theft of services, fraud, maybe a misdemeanor, maybe a felony, depending on how the DA feels about corrupt pastors." I buttoned my jacket and offered my arm to Camilla. "Enjoy the rest of your retreat." We walked out of the ballroom without looking back. The last thing I heard was Sloane sobbing and Lucian shouting for a manager, demanding to speak to someone in charge, already trying to spin his way out of a trap with no exit. The drive home was quiet. Camilla drove the Range Rover with confidence, having spent her whole life behind the wheel of expensive vehicles. I sat in the passenger seat, watching the mountains shrink in the side mirror. "What now?" I asked. Camilla considered my question and replied, "Now I file for divorce. The prenup makes it straightforward. He'll fight it, of course, but the affidavit is ironclad. My lawyers are very good, and the church, the board, will have an emergency meeting Monday morning. I imagine he'll be removed before noon, without the building, without the parsonage, without my family's donations. There is no church, not for him anyway." She looked at me. "What about you? What happens with?" I had thought about this a lot over the past few weeks. The anger had subsided, the betrayal still stung, but mostly I felt tired. "I'll file for divorce too," I said. "Virginia is an equitable distribution state, but I documented everything, the church funds she helped him steal, the lies, the fraud. My lawyer thinks I'll come out okay." I paused. "I'm selling the house, too many memories. I'll start over somewhere else." "Does that sound healthy?" My laughter echoed, devoid of mirth, as I inadvertently shattered the lives of 2 individuals. With meticulous precision and calculated intent, I executed my plan, orchestrating it with the precision of a well-coordinated military campaign. Is this behavior conducive to good health? Silence enveloped Camilla briefly, then she uttered, "They dismantled your life initially. You merely reciprocated with more finesse." Indeed, we returned to town past midnight, Camilla dropping me at my soon-to-be sold house. We lingered in the driveway for a spell, and she expressed gratitude, acknowledging she couldn't have accomplished this feat alone. "Yes, you could have," she conceded, reminding me of the years I had prepared. A wan smile graced her face, barely reaching her eyes, hinting at satisfaction that was less fulfilling if it happened differently. As she departed in her Range Rover, its tail lights vanishing around the bend, I entered my vacant dwelling, poured myself a whiskey, and sat in the darkness. 6 months later, the divorce decree came through. Sloane challenged it, citing emotional distress and coercion, but the proof was indisputable. She retained only her personal belongings and the debt she incurred supporting Lucian's lavish lifestyle. In less than a week, Lucien was expelled from the church as the affidavit became public knowledge. He attempted to establish a new ministry elsewhere, but the internet's long memory condemned him, linking his name forever with the scandal. Camilla amassed everything, the house, investments, land, selling most of it, and contributing substantially to a women's shelter. The church structure was demolished and replaced by a community center. I imagine her grandfather would have been pleased. I relocated to a new city, commenced a fresh job, and embarked on the long, laborious process of learning to trust once more. Some days are tougher than others, and certain nights still find me yearning for someone who isn't there. Yet I don't lament my actions, not an instant, for some betrayals are so severe, so tactical, so heartlessly cruel that the only retribution fitting is a total and comprehensive dismantling. Not just revenge, but justice. That is the distinction. Regarding Pastor Lucien, his actions may seem unconventional, but they are not exceptional based on data published by the American Christian Counseling Association. Between 14% and 18% of pastors openly admit to having physical or emotional affairs, respectively. However, when considering that 14% of those surveyed admitted lying on the questionnaire, researchers estimate the real rate of clergy infidelity could reach as high as 40%. This is attributed to a harmful blend of stress, emotional detachment, and what one researcher termed shared ministry passions, which can begin spiritually but evolve into something else. Lucien was simply a statistic.